So this session is about public opinion and awareness creation. So what we are basically trying to look at is the primary relationship that exists between the concept of public opinion and how the process of awareness creation gets associated with it. What awareness creation does is it it opens up a lot of mind. It opens up a lot of mind when we look at public and the kind of public discourse that exists in the society. We can look back and say that how aware the public is or not. Okay, in any society, in any state, any country, if we can look at the public and say that, okay, this is how aware they are about everything that is happening in and around. If you remember in yesterday's session, I did kind of touched upon this when we look at a generational gap regarding how knowledge transmission happened. And people were a lot more self-aware regarding what is happening in and around them than totally being consumed to themselves. Okay, and the example that I suggested was your parents and their parents and how aware they were regarding the socio-political affairs of the country as against you are, though you are loaded with information, lot more information than the kind of informational access they had. But whatever limited was the resources still with newspapers and one radio channel that is All India Radio and one television channel called Doordarshan. That was all the scope that they had as far as informational exchange is concerned or information acquisition is concerned. As against you who can pick and choose. Now you have information right at your fingertip, right? On a smartphone. So when you are offered with so much of content, how do you process that information and what do you do out of it? And who has a larger role to play in this context? Okay, so what media does is one of the primary functions that media has undertaken over a period of time, just by the very nature of its existence, is awareness creation. And largely the journalism media or the news media. News media plays a very vital role in that process of how relevant information could be passed on to the public. And when relevant information is passed on to the public or the media consumers, that in turn helps in shaping public opinion. Because when you are aware as an individual, and then you are aware as a collective, collective would be this, individual would be each person. If each of you come across an information which is relevant and you agree or you seek that information, at a certain point in time, all of you would be aware as far as that information is concerned. And then the next logical step that emerges is how you're going to use that information to the benefits of the individual as well as the community. That is how it is, right? So when a lot of people agree to that kind of an information that is shared by the media, that helps in the shaping of public opinion. There is a direct correlation between how public opinion is shaped and what kind of awareness could be beneficial for all the citizens, cutting across caste, class, and gender. What does this statement mean? How do we look at that relationship? What I call as a symbiotic relationship. At one hand, you have awareness creation, or how public opinion is shaped. On the other hand is the role of media in this entire process. Right? So when information flow happens, information flow in an ideal scenario should cut across caste, class, and gender, and everybody should have access to information. General information. I'm not talking about every kind, but the information which are relevant to a particular, to every individual and societies, and how it could be beneficial to mankind in general. For example, protests by farmers in India with respect to the recently formulated farmer laws, the recently formulated farm laws is also a byproduct of the public opinion that would have gone a certain kind of public. What kind of public have a larger say in the formulation of farmer laws? The governing elite. You understand the governing elite? Those people who are policy making for us on our behalf, our elected representatives. They're the ones who are creating these laws and policies for us, right? So the protest, what did the protest do? The protest brought awareness among the non-farming community. Who are the non-farming community? You and me, we are the non-farming community. We are not directly engaged in agricultural activities, right? Our only relationship with agriculture is consumption. But are we producers? Is there anybody who is a farmer who can say that I am a farmer or my parents are farmers? Very few. Okay. Your urban dwellers, your parents are doing businesses in the city or doing jobs or whatever. That's how their occupational engagement is. But traditionally, when we look at a society which is pre-industrial in nature, which was agrarian in nature, the primary source of occupation was agriculture. And ours, for example, our country has mostly been an agrarian economy for the longest period of time. It's only in the 70s with the Nehruvian era that certain amount of industrial relationship got developed. And that was, the proliferation of industries and factories and mills were looked at as symbols of development. That's how it is, right? Now to come back, so in such sort of a situation, the non-farming community, which is you and me, when we do not have any direct engagement with what is happening in the farming community, what happens is we tend to alienate ourselves socially from the issue that concerns the farming community only. If something, for example, something happens in the university, something that concerns you as students, it concerns us. But tell me, would a bank employee get affected? Or would a sports person get affected? I'm talking about a direct relationship between that. No, right? So they might or might not concern themselves with that kind of protest or issues or news or information. Whereas when we look at the largest picture of this kind of protests against the farmer laws, what the media did is through the protest, by covering the protest, by reflecting upon the protest, it brought in certain kind of an awareness among the non-farming community, which is you and me, about the negative implications of the laws, which the farmers were allegedly claiming to be unconstitutional. The reason why I'm saying allegedly claiming, because they are, the media as well as the opposition is opposition to those people who are protesting, largely the dispensation, continue to claim that this is undemocratic and unconstitutional in nature. And this kind of protest by the farming community could have a larger impact on the economy. On the other hand, try and understand, those farmers are protesting the negative sides of the law because they think that those kind of laws and policies are detrimental to economy, especially the small scale industries and pockets of farming communities in different parts of India. So there are clearly two ideological thoughts or two ideological schools here. So where awareness becomes important is which side to take your stance by. Whether you are either on the side of the farmers or you are against the farmers. You can turn around and say that it's not that black and white. It is that black and white, provided you engage yourself in an in-depth study of that history of protest and why it was started and what are the laws. You need to read the laws for yourself. The fact that there is a protest happening and there is a reason behind the protest. Every protest has a rationale. Non-farming community would never get to know about the rationale behind this unless it comes into the picture. To be aware about the socio-economic and political situation of the state and country allows the citizens to actively participate in debates across forums. What does this mean? Whatever is happening in and around your country and abroad as well, it's the onus is on the citizens, the onus is on the public to participate in the debates. If we remain a passive audience, then everybody will work on us. They'll continue to formulate policies and irrespective of governments. I'm not criticizing the current dispensation particularly. I'm talking about every government, whether it's Congress government, the communist government, or the right wing, BJP-led right wing government, any government for that matter. As part of the civil society, it is our responsibility to fight for our own rights, to fight for the rights of people who lack voice or who are less privileged, who never got an opportunity to go to schools and colleges and actually study the nuances of political theory and how they are put to practice. They cannot critique the policies that is offered to them by government because their understanding of a certain thing is too limited. At least that is what is assumed. That's why the intellectual elite also gets a certain supreme position, because they can argue, they can write, they can film, they can shoot, they can do all these things. And the media many a times becomes the intellectual elite. But intellectual elitism is not taking us anywhere in this country. We need the public to engage in the kind of debates which concerns themselves. So the moment the public is aware, the moment the public is conscious of every actions and thoughts taken up by the dispensation and the civil society, that sort of awareness and knowledge could help build consensus regarding various issues that has an impact going further in the voting scene. You would be in a better position to choose your leaders. And the formulation of public policy. If you get a right government who actually cares for the public, it is likely that they would come up with policies which are favorable to the public instead of favorable to a handful of corporates and the business elites. Now you understand how the money is being diverted, right? That is the notion, that is the very nature of a capitalistic society. Public opinion, as you may have understood by now, is shaped by conservative and liberal ideologies, and in an ideal scenario, should withstand political correctness. It must drive the media concerned with the shaping process. Who is being shaped? You and me, we are being shaped. The media consumers are being shaped. Those people who are the taxpayers, those people who vote are the ones who are at the receiving end, right? They're the ones who are going to get shaped. Now, in such sort of a scenario, irrespective of whether you belong to you feel for the right party or the left party or the center party, whether your ideas are conservative or liberal, when it is a matter of public opinion formation, you should as much withstand political correctness, both as individuals as well as institutions. Your stance is important. If you are not taking stance, what is happening is you say that, okay, silence is my stance. Silence is not your stance. Silence is acceptance. Silence is defeat. In this context, silence is defeat. Silence is something which is problematic in nature. What you are doing is you are saying this from a space of privilege. You are saying this from a sense of privilege. And that privilege is not self-earned. It's offered to you because you're born into excess family or wise family, and you are in a relatively better socioeconomic condition where you could go and study in the best of the schools and colleges and earn a degree and education. But the whole process is meaningless if you can't take a stand. So if you are being politically correct all the time, the issue that emerges is you would always take a centrist approach. And centrist approach is not too healthy for the growth of a democracy or for the evolution of a democracy. He says, I'm a bad person. You agree that I'm a bad person. 20,000 people agree I'm a bad person. And that's about it. Then that becomes the norm. If there is one person who disagrees, then he or she has the right to disagree and say that, no, I don't necessarily agree with you. He is a good person. There you go. And the debates must continue across. Because understand this system that we are talking about, the political system, is always a work in progress. There's no country which is perfect. There is no government which is absolute in nature. Tomorrow, if this current dispensation or the BJP-led right-wing government starts belting out policies which are extremely pro-public, know that there could be a problem as well. Because the public is not a homogeneous entity. It's a heterogeneous entity. It's like your palm, it's 5 fingers. Your hand, it's 5 fingers. They're different. And each of them come together to do a work. Am I clear? Yes, no? All right. Criticality of awareness creation brings into reference the dominating discourse in public opinion or what could be understood as the dominant paradigm. What are paradigms? What are paradigms? What is a paradigm? No. You can look at it as a set of dominant ideas. Ideas which would go on to become policies. Ideas that could emerge as actions. So what happens here is we need to be in a space of criticality. We need to be in a space of critical argumentation whenever there is some sort of a reference to a dominant discourse. Because remember, the dominant discourse is going to lead the public to a consensus before it gets regularized and before it becomes a norm. Somebody, try and understand, somebody would have decided at one point in time, then when we talk about the traffic system, green is symbolic of something, the color green is symbolic of something, the color orange is symbolic of something, and the color red is symbolic of something. So across the world, when you go, green means go, red means stop. What is interesting here, what I want your attention in this case is understand how this color symbolism or color motif came into picture in the first place. Awareness creation is also a part of the construction of a code. You understand code, COD? It's a part of a larger construction of a larger political code. So both as individuals and as part of the larger community. If you are a media, you happen to be a media producer, not just a passive media consumer. It is our responsibility to engage the public with content which is of critical importance. This is where the new news value factor comes into picture. The priority comes into picture. as a journalist, how responsible I am while putting forward the stories. And how do you decide that this story is more crucial and important than the other story? How do you make news priorities? Why should I tell her story instead of us? The calls that are taken on the editable, there is a larger implication to that. When you tend to not write about farmer suicide in Vidarbha, in Maharashtra for the longest period of time, the very nature of that act is violating the principles of erasure from the public memory. Public's memory is very short span, right? Because we are consistently bombarded with a lot of information. If farming community going down the drain and farmers committing suicide is not the most important issue on the planet, because they're the ones who are the food producers, the chief food producers. Tomorrow, if the farming community decides not to farm, what will you eat at the first place? We are yet to reach that stage where AI can make you a meal. Unless you are fed on microchips, not food. Like you are a robotized program. Are you? So how is it not a concern of you and me? Allow the farmers to protest. Allow the farmers to die. And we call ourselves a democracy. We call ourselves a developing economy. What a joke. Isn't it ridiculous a thought that while our farming community is at its worst condition, we are celebrating development? They also have the right to pursue a certain profession with dignity, right? They work so hard to ensure that you get few meals a day of your choice, by the way, because you can afford to buy. What can they afford? They can only afford debt. They can afford suicides. They can afford killings. This is what they afford. So if you're turning around and you're saying that you have got no business, then you have got no business in consumption as well. Stop eating food. Because somewhere, some farmer has decided to produce that food. That's how it is reaching through multiple, of course, channels of distribution. But if there is no production, there won't be any distribution. And if there is no distribution, there won't be any consumption. You remember the first phase of lockdown, right when lockdown happened, on 17th of March last year. Yeah, 22nd March, officially it happened. But before that, the noise was so much that people have gone into lockdown already. If you remember going to the supermarkets, you see people doing panic buying. And in no time, for the next 3 days, supermarkets were empty. And this is what happens. This is exactly what happens. You can afford to buy, so you empty the racks. The ones who produce them, they never get that kind of a deal at the first place to walk into a store and buy a few things, essentials, mind you. You won't die if you won't have pasta for a day. I'm talking about essentials. They can't even afford essentials. So how is it not a concern for us? So those kind of things need to be in the public forum, need to be discussed, debated as much as they could be. That could bring in necessary public opinion on issues and challenges pertaining to the socio-economic and political situations of the country. That is the reason why when emergency happened, so much of hue and cry was created. When Mandal Commission came into power, so much of protest happened. When Rohit Vemula passed away in University of Hyderabad, there were protests that happened in Kerala and JNU and Pune and other places. All student communities up in arms. So unless there is a platform to discuss, how would be the public aware? Because the information won't flow. If handful of media houses which are governed by corporates and the governing elites, the politicians, choose to control the information flow because that is antithetical to their business ideas, the information would not reach the public. This is the reason why you need RTI activists, you need whistleblowers, you need all these people who must go out and deliver information to the public in the most truthful way. Because they are the conscience keepers of our society. Otherwise, we have eroded ourselves. Every public which is suffering, we don't want them to exist. Remember when Ivanka Trump came right before Ivanka's visit, how all of a sudden for a couple of days Hyderabad was beautified. There are not a single beggars on the street or the street dogs. Look at the population of Hyderabad. Do a math, do the math and find out how many beggars were there on the streets, how many stray dogs, and where did they disappear? Only for 3 days. Who should account for this kind of information? And why selective information access is given? That's why multiple media becomes important, consumption from their sources. Also understand that awareness building is a structured process and takes time. So any rush to frame public opinion would be detrimental for the population, especially the young adults. If we rush in to build public opinion, it won't happen. It's a very structured, time-taking process. Because we have no idea what kind of baggages each of us are carrying with us. Conscious, subconscious, all kinds. How well we are exposed to the world history and politics. All of your political science students are going to be or continuing to be. But after your 3 years, do you care? The very fact that at this point in time, you've already spent 20 years on this earth and you don't know whether you're political or not. Happily assuming that you're not political. Why is it problematic when you rush to frame public opinion? Swaying is easy, but that's done by charlatans. That's done by those people who want to create a hogwash. That sway the public's mind in a certain way, misguide them, misdirect them, and create a bubble. And let people enter into that bubble world and stay. As against fact-driven, data-driven journalism, where you put actual numbers in the public site and let the debates and arguments emerge from there. Awareness creation is also the process harnessed by political positioning of media. What do we mean by political positioning of media? Where they are placed as far as their political ideologies are concerned, and how the public reacts to policies and decisions taken by the government. So there are two things here. One is media's positioning, political positioning. Another is public's positioning regarding policies and issues or decisions that are taken by the government. The information to the public from the media pans out accordingly. And the ideological stance of news media houses thus creates a rough framework for debates and discourses. So whatever I had been talking about, to sum it up, this is what it is. You should be able to objectively see what kind of ideological stance media houses are taking. Remember, self-awareness is a lot more important to begin with before collective awareness can happen. If you want to educate the public, you need to educate yourself first. Instead of arguing and putting your point aggressively, saying that, no, I'm the one who is more learned among you. You don't need to say that. Show the data, do the analytics, tell them simple mathematics. This is where you are. This is the policy that was laid out by the government. These are the beneficial factors. This many number of families or X volume of the population or Y volume of the population has benefited from this. Let the public see it for themselves. Instead of the establishment engaging in propagandist activities to promote themselves supremely. And most of the times, that's a lie. That's how fake news gets peddled, both on social as well as in mainstream. We must know, be aware about the kind of content floated by the media in the name of awareness. So, like I said earlier, our job is to create an ideal scenario for discussion. So the ideal scenario is this. The real scenario is something else. In the real scenario, content flow is regulated. Content flow is censored. And when these activities are done, they are done with full consciousness to drive the crowd a certain way. That's the chief function of propaganda. So though media should ideally make people aware through information dissemination, production and dissemination, how many media houses engage in those kind of truthful journalism is very important for us to understand. It's like a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. So information comes and false news and fake news also comes. So at one end, there is a space or a platform to discuss about critical matters, that is politics, economic, healthcare. Okay, just to give you an example, politics, economics, healthcare. The same space is also utilized for political and religious propaganda, which could in turn impact public opinion. Understand where the drive is and what is important. Is political religious propaganda important? Is vote bank politics important? Or discussion about politics, policies, economic, healthcare, women, education important? So as the public, we need to make a choice. And then once we make a choice, we can try to spread awareness accordingly by being truthful and objective. Okay, so thank you. That's where I stop regarding this topic.